3 cases of echoic mimicry, or 3 attempts at hearing outside of my own fucking head. Echoic mimicry is a concept in social interaction research which had been appropriated by the artist Paul Carter to describe situations of cross-cultural encounter. In this context, it refers to cases where mishearing is directed right back at the speaking subject, which the subject mimics, which in turn contributes towards the speaking subject's sense of self. Think mispronunciation of your non-English language name by native English-speaking friends, which, over time, after repeated attempts at correcting their mispronunciations, becomes the way you refer to yourself, but not without a sense of humour. Echoic mimicry does not entail a loss of agency. Instead, it conjures a double body doubly remembered. In the following, I present 3 interconnected cases of echoic mimicries. English statesman Sir John Barrow was a member of the Macartney Embassy, the first British embassy in China, from 1792 to 1794. In 1804, Barrow published a travelogue that chronicled some of the more curious observations during his short residence at the imperial court in Peking, as well as at the rest of the nation. In this book, Barrow included a transcription of an air in praise of the flower Mu Li, jasmine flower, which was said to have been one of the most popular songs in the whole country. This was not the first time that the British public had encountered this tune from China. Another version of it had, in fact, appeared in print some 8 years before Barrow's publication. This earlier version of Molly Hua was published by composer Carl Cambra. In Cambra's publication, the Molly Hua melody was accompanied by an original harpsichord harmonization that was added to appeal to contemporary English tastes. Barrow was critical of Cambra's version of Molly Hua and considered it inauthentic. Harmonization belonged to the refined arts of European music, noted Barrow, while Chinese melodies were plain and monophonic. A Chinese band generally plays, or endeavours to play, in unison, and sometimes an instrument takes the octave, but they never attempt to play in separate parts, confining their art to the melody only, if I may venture to apply a name of so much sweetness to an aggregation of harsh sounds. They have not the least notion of counterpoint, or playing in parts, an invention indeed to which the elegant Greeks had not arrived, and which seems to have been unknown in Europe as well as Asia until the monkish ages. Barrow's comment on the harshness of Chinese instruments was meant to be read as a subjective judgment call. In contrast, the use of harmony presented itself objectively as a measurement of refinement, of knowledge and of progress. This notion of harmonic sophistication as a sign of progress is one of the most enduring narratives of Western music. The set narrative goes something like this. The primitive monophonic textures of liturgical chant and folk melodies of antiquity gave way to the development of polyphony in the Middle Ages, which approached maturity during the Renaissance and reached its zenith in the work of J.S. Bach. Bach's ingenuity in harmonic innovation led numerous contemporary commentators to draw parallels between him and Isaac Newton, and by extension between harmony and rationality. This perception of the composer in turn helped to establish the archetypical model of the learned musician as a pseudo-scientist mathematician, a model that will influence musicians in the centuries that followed. We read in 1801 the following assessment. The name of Johann Sebastian Bach radiates supremely and sublimely above those of all German composers in the first half of the past century. He embraced with Newton's spirit everything that has hitherto been thought about harmony, and that has been presented as examples thereof, and he penetrated its depths so completely and felicitously that he must be justly regarded as the law-maker of genuine harmony, which is valid up to the present day. And in August 1750, only days after Bach's death, another commentator wrote, assuming the harmonies of this great man were so complex that they would not always achieve the intended result, they nevertheless serve for the connoisseur's genuine delight. Not all learned people are able to understand a Newton, but those who have progressed far enough in profound science so they can understand him will find a greater gratification and real benefit in reading his work. For Barrow, the absence of harmony was what deprived the music of China the Newtonian spirit of innovation and rationality, which at the same time was also the feature that bestowed upon his version of Molly Hoo-ha a feeling of exotic authenticity, a textbook case of Orientalist othering. Looking carefully at the Barrow's Molly Hoo-ha transcription, however, one immediately notices several peculiarities in the lyrics, which, according to Taiwanese ethnomusicologist Huang Yilong, were clearly cases of mistranslation caused by mishearing. For instance, in the last stanza of the song, Kan Wai Yin Ma, which should have been "the watcher of the flowers will scold me," was mistranslated into "the flower seen men will envy." Elsewhere, the character Dai, which in its pre-modern form should be taken as being equivalent to the character Yu, to desire, was misheard as the tonally similar Dai, to wear. One could only hope that Barrow's source was more careful when transcribing the melody itself. When compared to several other surviving transcriptions of the Molly Hoo-ha melody, including an 1821 version in the traditional Gonchi notation, an 1831 Japanese publication that referred to a tune by the same title that was said to have been brought to Japan by merchants during the Edo period, Barrow's version was notably different in both melodic contour and rhythm, while the three Chinese versions resemble each other relatively more closely. The commonly circulated modern version of Molly Hoo-ha melody in Greater China, however, resemble Barrow's version instead of that of the three Chinese sources. One possible cause for this is the enormous commercial success of Barrow's travelogue, which within several years was translated into Dutch and French and possibly also other European languages, which in turn might have led to the tune being brought back to China in subsequent European embassies. The fact that Chinese music scholarship had traditionally been plagued by the problem of a lack of reliable sources certainly might have contributed towards this. Who knows? Regardless, the fact remains that it is an English mishearing of Molly Hoo-ha that now constitutes the song's identity, and by extension, a nation's musical self-perception. So, is there anything wrong per se with this curious state of affairs? Is there an ethical problem somewhere? Has history been misrepresented? Has cultural capital been exploited? Does there exist a sinister colonial past that stands stubbornly uncorrected? Only if you are actually of the opinion that these events somehow render the commonly circulated version of Molly Hoo-ha less authentic as a cultural symbol. And this, you should really only care if you are, like Barrow was, trying to sell more books. I cradled the word authentic with quotation marks because we are not talking about literal correctness. We are firmly in the realm of mimetic metafiction. Correctness, the paltriest of all virtues, is something to demand of students, not artists. The strange genealogy of Molly Hoo-ha is instructive for you and me both, because it reminds us that none of us possesses the ability to hear our voice from outside of ourselves, and so hearing through somebody else's ear canal, if there ever existed such a thing, might be the only way out of your own fucking head. In Hong Kong, and in many parts of post-open door policy China, the ridiculously romantic and easy listening world of Kenny G-esque pop, which in North America is officially known as Adult Contemporary, AC, had become associated with commerce, which is not at all surprising given that its rise coincided with the expansion of the multinational music industry into Asia. And in the same way that commerce cannot be contained, this mutated strain of localized AC also cannot be contained. Since 1989, Kenny G's Going Home has occupied a special status of being the unofficial closing song for malls, department stores, health clubs, and other commercial premises all over China. AC is also the musical genre of choice for the depiction of sexually suggestive scenes, and the liberal lifestyle of the Western-educated upper middle class on TV and in films. The immensely popular Hong Kong legal drama series The File of Justice, which was first aired in 1992, featured as its theme a Dire Straits song, but with all of its vocals and any harmonization that is crunchier than a dominant seventh taken out, thus turning it into a sort of harmonious, unthreatening, Kenny G-esque musical wallpaper. A side note, if Kenny G is the royalty of AC, then Celine Dion is its reigning queen. Both of them have performed arrangements of Molly Hoo-Ha that have become hugely popular in China. The curious thing about AC is that while in North America its softest variant had waned in popularity and had largely been superseded by AC hybrid subgenres, it never really went out of vogue in Hong Kong, in the sense that it maintained its artistic relevance and dominance over the airwaves. The soundscape of some of the most recent canto pop, built with newer synth banks that shine like justice, may feel more contemporary, but there is no mistaking to my ears that they are, at their cores, formalistically, unabashedly sentimental AC ballads. The difference between AC in America and in Hong Kong today is this. In America, AC critics readily and justifiably dismiss the softest of ACs as self-consciously middle of the road, unthreatening and inauthentic, and any surge in mainstream popularity in AC will be described in terms of a revival. In Hong Kong, AC managed to retain its potentiality to be sincere. Even the edgiest of canto pop acts have been known to mix more adventurous offerings with a dose of sentimental AC. Like democracy in its pure form, what we have is a strain of AC that is forever young, that is relentlessly committed to the preservation of its integrity, a commitment that has, in turn, produced a new form that is immune to mutating into a caricature of itself. This strain of Hong Kong AC will drive more than a few of my educated American and European friends up the wall. All that said, all that being true, what if I just can't get enough of AC? What does it say about me and the wasted years of advanced musical training that fail to unchain my ear from sweet AC hold? Further, what if something that is perceived by you as period, yet not old enough to be authentic, is unconsciously perceived by me as being a signpost for a sort of liberal, contemporary, aspirational feeling, which also turns out to be the very thing that constitutes my sense of self? What if the pure form of AC that is being held up on a pedestal is, in fact, musically speaking, the most Hong Kong thing that one could ever hope to encounter? Should this give you pause? Should you be disappointed? Only if you are, like Barrow was, trying to sell more books. My hideously clumsy report on the current state of musical affairs in Hong Kong may be more elegantly summarized with Zizek's Santa Claus analogy on the other's knowledge, which goes like this. Parents obviously don't believe in Santa, but neither do the children. The children are just playing along because they believe that they will incur some social cost for violating the expectations of others, who believe in Santa in their place, i.e. the children don't want to be party poopers. Anyway, all that was just to impress upon you that I didn't grow up listening to regional opera or Chinese instrumental music, not on the radio, not on the television, not anywhere. So imagine the cognitive dissonance I experienced when I was confronted with, for the first time, what claimed to be 7th century Chinese music during an Asian music undergraduate seminar. Togaku is a subgenre of Japanese court music that refers to music that's been imported into Japan from China during the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907. According to a traditional view held by Japanese court musicians, present-day Togaku represents a perfectly preserved inheritance that has not changed in 1,000 years, which is to say, present-day Togaku is largely identical to music from the Tang imperial court. Togaku is an exquisite and beautiful music that is typified by shimmering and highly dissonant harmony that provides no harmonic progress, and tempi so slow that all sense of passing time is held in suspension. As for its romantic claim of a perfectly preserved cultural inheritance, musicologists have already established that no known form of medieval Chinese melody resembles the melodic features of present-day Togaku. Further, togakus, similar to many other musical traditions that involve large ensembles, is predominantly an oral tradition, meaning that musicians learn by listening and then echoing what they hear. So it's highly improbable that things have not modified even in the slightest in over 1300 years. The curious thing is that if you took away all the tone cluster harmonization that gives togaku its characteristic dissonant sound and perform this stripped down version of tugaku at a sufficiently quick tempo for a melodic sense to emerge, then the result would yield melodies that bear resemblance to the known corpus of medieval Chinese music. The trouble is, we have no reliable primary musical sources that would tell us what Tang court music really sounded like, so somebody else's mishearing is all you've got. How would one go about reconstructing this lost music? Turns out the moment you try to do that, the other's knowledge gets in the way. Rujing Huang, a doctoral student in ethnomusicology from Harvard, wrote an interesting report on the court music revival movement in Beijing, which has turned to togaku, specifically its complex modal harmony, as a model. It is generally held that traditional Chinese musical works are monophonic, but the Yayue revivalists spend considerable effort on the repatriation of a Chinese harmonic practice through speculative theorizing and musical reenactment. According to Huang, the reason behind the revivalist emphasis on the harmony is twofold. One, to upgrade China's image from one of musical primitivism to that of a sophisticated musical hegemon, to capitalize on the civilizing force of harmony to fight evil with evil, and two, to define a Chinese harmonic practice that differentiates itself from its Western tonal other through complex, non-progressing dissonances. There is something very, very strange going on here in terms of Chinese music's relationship to the technology of harmony as a symbol of cultural and historical progress. The other half of the harmony as progress narrative, which I omitted earlier, goes like this. Western music became increasingly dissonant throughout the classical and romantic periods, until it reached a breaking point in the music of Richard Wagner, and finally reorientated itself through the new rationality of the 12-tone method that abandoned all sense of harmonic progress. What the court music revivalists managed to achieve through cherry-picking from music history is to conjure a story of an ancient, hyper-advanced Chinese musical culture, like some Atlantean myth come true, where the court musicians of Tang achieved in the 7th century what the Second Viennese school of composers had only managed to achieve at the turn of the 20th century. The only problem with this narrative is that, historically speaking, the exact opposite was true. Huang noted that in a 1996 study, Chinese musicologist Zhu Jichang traced the historical transformation of harmonic practices in China and concluded that the trajectory is one of the constant simplification of dissonant harmonies towards consonance, until it evolved into a strictly consonant harmonic model in the Qing dynasty. Now, what sort of anti-hegemonic grand narrative can you build with that? See? This shit is real. You can't win. Authentic, true, natural, these are big words that he slaps your face with when he ran out of things to say about the thing itself. He will pick an arbitrary point in time, 20 or 40 or 100 or 1,000 years ago, and declare it the ur-text. And you play kami script? What is one to do? Beautiful accidents of history. These things, they just are. The only good and bad things are people's various judgments in the face of what it is. In the opening scenes of Stephen Frears' Victoria and Abdul, we see the Indian protagonist being dressed ceremonially in preparation for a presentation of a gift to his colonizer. When Abdul pointed out to the dresser that a belt is not normally a part of the traditional attire, the dresser insisted that its addition contributed to the costume's authenticity. Yes, unequal power is at play, and so on and so forth, and blah 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 blah. Hey, nice try. But you would never ascend above and beyond the role of a good student, a model minority, with that as your rebuttal. Besides, never repay evil with evil. You are better than that. Try instead to think of that belt as a communal invention, as a strange, special, but beautiful glitch that we share. The dresser was just playing ad lib, if you think about it. I rather think this is exactly how things ought to be, all the time and everywhere.
你會覺得係一大班人，但係出嚟嘅效果係得一個咁。
Orchestra is more of like different instruments coming together producing like one whole sound, and like the beauty out of like orchestra would be like all those different sounds that they produce, so they each have like their own color and all those stuff, but then like it was brought together by being like in a group. That's how you get close to each other as well, because like you spend time a lot with them, and the fact that we see the growth with each member as well, because like at the start it was very messy, and then like once we near like the time when we are actually going to perform, it actually started forming together, and there's like a joy behind that as well.
Daddy 主張就係唔俾譜我哋嘅，就靠佢讀一段啦，即係唱一段，跟住我哋跟住唱，咁就一段一段咁樣標落佢成個 piece 咯。
廣東話諺語裡面嘅牛頭唔搭馬嘴嘅意思呢，即係話喺對話裡面其中一方答非所問，令人哋摸不着頭腦。有説呢，牛頭唔搭馬嘴嘅出處係明末清初嘅作家馮夢龍嘅白話小說《警世通言》。牛頭唔搭馬嘴呢，英文可以翻譯成為 A cow talking past a horse's mouth。牛頭唔搭馬嘴一説呢，喺廣東話裡面呢就比較流行，但係白話文裡面呢，驢唇唔對馬嘴呢先至係比較正常嘅表述。從邏輯嚟睇呢，驢唇唔對馬嘴呢意思上面都比較正確嘅。首先呢，驢同埋馬攞嚟比較呢就正常不過啦。但因為兩種動物嘅外表好似啦，成語裡面亦都有非牛非馬呢個講法，用嚟講呢事物不倫不類。從身體嘅部分嚟講呢，嘴同埋唇嘅對比都比較對稱嘅。相關嘅言語呢，仲有風馬牛不相及。喺春秋時代，陳宮領軍討伐楚國，楚王派人對陳宮話：君處北海，寡人處南海，為是風馬牛不相及也。全段話嘅意思呢，大概就係、我哋兩個國家距離咁遠，就算呢有我哋啲牛啊、畜生啊、馬亂咁走呢，都跑唔到對方嘅國家嚟嘅。風呢喺呢度呢就作動詞用，係放入、走失嘅意思。相似嘅解釋呢，仲有《古文觀止》裏面嘅所謂牛走順風，馬走逆風。風呢亦都可以指交配，意思呢就即係話牛同埋馬呢就唔可以混種嘅，用呢個呢嚟比喻兩件事唔相干。其實牛同埋馬係咪真係搭唔到嘴嘅呢？牛同埋馬又係咪真係唔可以混種嘅呢？雖然呢生物學就暫時未有答案，但係歷史上牛馬同體嘅傳說呢就比比皆是。亞歷山大大帝嘅坐騎，傳說中呢就係牛頭馬身嘅動物啦。種畜牧嘅工作業者都知道呢，牛同埋驢有時候呢係會交配嘅。聖經申命記裏面呢就規定不可並用牛驢耕地，其實就係反映咗以色列人呢擔心牛驢交配會影響品種嘅純正，破壞咗神創造天地嘅時候各從其類嘅古老律法。呢個亦都顯示咗新約嘅神裏面信與不信不能同負一軌嘅規定。雖然呢聖經中嘅神呢似乎就係唔太接受混種呢啲新派嘢啦，但係牛馬混種嘅實驗呢 其實一直都存在嘅。喺2015年呢，英國嘅考古學家就喺倫敦一個鐵器時代嘅埋骨地，發現古人故意將牛頭骨配馬腳骨同葬，即係牛頭馬腳亂交叉嚟，試做咧傳說裡面嘅複合獸，英文即係咧 a horse streaming through a cow's head。嗱，混種咧通常咧就不育嘅。嗱，雖然佢哋咧並非不可能嘅物種，但係咧佢哋就有啲尷尬啦，因為咧佢哋唔可以自我複製，所以咧有心人咧必須要複製佢哋。It's a lot of work。一本關於1703年出版嘅馬隻配種手冊咧，就有如何配出牛馬混種嘅詳細説明啦。One must keep the bull in a darkened stall, get him used to wearing a rope halter and give him plenty of good feed, rub him frequently with the same grooming powder used for stallions. Keep him in this manner for a few months, leading him about regularly by his halter, which should be done at night. And meanwhile, each day use a sponge to rub him well under his nose with the sense of a man in heat. Then, on a quiet night, one can lead him to the mare and let him cover her.
So, thank you very much for that, Samson. Impressive and thought-provoking, and you asked me to. we could have a dialogue, and I think I might have some questions that just goes in the direction of unpacking some things a little bit. So. Maybe the first question that came into my mind, what was the origin or inspiration of this lecture performance?
So I was working on an exhibition for which actually just went up at the University of Edinburgh, Tolerance Gallery, and that whole show tries to look at sort of notion of authenticity that has circulated in music in various ways in different works. So this project is one of the 4 pieces in that show, and that actually came about through a conversation with one of the essay writers for the catalogue who was doing a little bit of work on the Jasmine Flower song and the genealogy of it, and he had identified the John Barrow publication, the 1904 publication, and had alerted me to it. And so I started to read up more about the genealogy of the Jasmine Flower song, and then discovered that the version that we sort of, or at least people in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and in China know as the Jasmine Flower song actually most closely resembled the 1904 version. And it's just started taking. So that was how the work started. It really started with the John Barrow publication and the discovery of it.
Another matter, yes, and I was also actually considering if there was any specific intention behind this. What was in your mind? Is it an allegory? I read a lot of into it, but maybe it's my European, background that does that, or is that just maybe it's a too simple question actually, but did you have some kind of intention, something on your mind when you were thinking this and doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot on my mind. I mean, I'm a very messy thinker, so everything that I was thinking and that was kind of going through my mind are in the piece in a way that is not edited. So yeah, there's a lot going through my mind, and of course, just the discovery of the song in itself is sort of that is interesting, but it's significant precisely because this song is so deeply embedded in sort of the musical national psyche of ethnically Chinese people. It is a song that you will know, and of course, when something is so familiar to you, you sort of don't really think about it, like the significance of it and how it's gone through various motions of appropriation and reappropriation. That sort of thing kind of escape you when it's something that is so obvious and common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because again, with my European art historian background, I saw some Joseph Beuys in there. And also married to chamber music, and I even saw maybe some Gordon Monahan somewhere. I don't know. That's my a little bit prolonged imagination, maybe. But are there such references, or are they only from the Chinese background? Are you in the East or in the West here?
Okay, so I get the question. I wasn't explicitly trying to reference sort of moments in art history. There are other pieces where I do it more sort of explicitly. If this is, like, if you perceive this as at least not conscious. I was watching a lot of Monty Python when I was making this.
Yeah. Okay. That totally derailed the rest of my questions. And it seems a little funny to then ask, how do you see this work in relation to media art histories, since we are here? I mean, Monty Python, yeah, I can see that. I grew up with that as well. Some might object, but I see a lot of links. But how would you unpack that?
I don't know. It's not something that I was consciously trying to think about. I was mostly, at least in the making of this work, I was mostly trying to address this very weird sort of chain of events of appropriation and reappropriation that got circulated. But of course, if you look at sort of the representation of the Jasmine Flower song in popular culture, there's a lot more in there that I was able than what I was able to unearth. So yeah, I wasn't consciously trying to think about that. Yeah.
We had the keynote this morning, Jamie Allen. I don't know if you hear Jamie, but he was talking about the reveal factor of media. And for me, of course, since I'm not that acquainted with, I guess I share that with a lot in the room, with Chinese culture and the background of Hong Kong culture as well. This is actually bringing about some sort of reveal for me in the mediation of what you're doing in this performance. So I'm wondering if there is some kind of point of a double take of how you were impacted both by, you could say, mainland China and the Western culture in what this performance is unfolding.
I mean, of course, I'm speaking very specifically to a Hong Kong context. So I think in Hong Kong, at least in sort of the popular culture that we consume and the way sort of my generation was brought up, we are, of course, in contact with British and American popular culture, and we have the same sort of, I think we are exposed to the same sort of currents. And so in the horse bit, I was also talking about how it was almost there is a sense of alienation or like a surprise for me when I attended sort of music program as an undergraduate in Australia, and then actually through that I came in contact with more traditional Chinese music in an Asian music seminar. But that's just the reality of how things are today. I mean, it's the reality, of course, is very different to somebody who grew up within mainland China. And then within mainland China, there are regional differences as well. I think the bigger difference these days, really, whether you are coming from a more urbanized area or a more sort of rural area, that is really a marker of the differences of the culture and the references that you're more exposed to. Yeah. And I think in Hong Kong we are a little bit more sheltered from, let's say, the nationalistic sort of agenda behind like a song like Jasmine Flower Song, for example. So at least for me, I'm able to look at it almost a little like clinically, almost like looking at this like an object that doesn't that has some sort of national significance, but doesn't speak to me personally, effectively at least.
Okay. I don't know. I don't have that many more questions. I don't know if you want to have some questions from the audience, or do we? I could also ask, is there anything I didn't ask about? But that's a too open question.
So I think we've all had a really long day. So I think I'm super happy to stay behind and answer and take any questions. But I just have a last closing anecdote. It's not really only it's not common, but maybe like if you're perplexed as to why the musicians are dressed as fruits, those are fruits and vegetables on horses like. So those are like little treats for the horse. So this is like kind of like the horse wet dream or something.
Thank you.
Thank you.